The classroom fell silent as the sound of chalk screeched against the board. The teacher, Mr. Collins, turned with a smirk across his sharp features. His eyes scanned the room and stopped on her, the girl with tightly braided hair and calm brown eyes, who always sat near the window. Her name was Maya. She sat straight in her chair, trying not to draw attention to herself. But the teacher would not let her go unnoticed today. He tapped the chalk twice on the board and pointed directly at her. Maya, he said, his voice carrying the heavy tone of authority. Stand up, tell the class the answer if you even know it. His words dripped with sarcasm, and the class stirred with uneasy laughter. Maya hesitated but stood slowly, clutching her notebook close. Her voice was soft but clear. The answer is 24, sir, she said. The teacher paused and raised his brows. He let out a short laugh that filled the room. 24, he repeated like the number was a crime. That is wrong, so very wrong, Maya. He shook his head, turning back to the board and slashing at it with chalk. See, class. This is what happens when someone spends more time daydreaming than paying attention. Maya's cheeks burned. She could feel every pair of eyes drilling into her. Some students pitied her, some enjoyed the show, others avoided looking altogether. Her hands trembled, but she remained standing. The teacher was not finished. He walked toward her desk slowly, his shoes clicking against the floor. Do you even belong in this class, Maya? He asked, not softly, but loud enough for all to hear. You should be grateful to even sit in these chairs. Yet you waste our time with foolish guesses. The laughter grew bolder now. A few kids chuckled behind their hands. Maya's eyes stung, but she refused to let tears fall. She lowered her gaze to the floor, refusing to give him the satisfaction of seeing her break. Mr. Collins leaned closer, a sneer forming across his lips. Maybe math is just not for you, Maya, he said, with cruel calm. Maybe some of us are simply not cut out for higher education. He straightened and turned to the class. Let this be a lesson, everyone. Not all students are equal. Elder words hung heavy in the air. A bitter chill ran through Maya. She could hear her heart pounding. In her chest, her mind screamed with anger, but her mouth remained shut. She sat down slowly, her fingers clenching into fists under the desk. One boy whispered loud enough to carry. Maybe she should just drop out. The giggles that followed cut deeper than knives. Maya felt her stomach twist. Her breath grew shallow. She wanted to scream, but instead, she wrote in her notebook, pressing her pencil so hard the tip snapped. The bell finally rang, and chairs scraped against the floor as students rushed out. Mr. Collins stood tall, watching them leave with satisfaction. Maya remained seated, her body frozen. She could not move just yet. The sting of humiliation chained her to the chair. When the room emptied except for her, the teacher walked by with his stack of papers. He paused by her desk and leaned down, almost whispering, "Do not embarrass yourself again." He walked out, leaving his words like poison behind. Maya stayed still for a long moment, then slowly gathered her books. Her chest was heavy, her throat tight, but her eyes stayed dry. She whispered to herself quietly, "I will not cry, I will not cry." She walked the hallway silent and unnoticed. Students brushed past, laughing, talking carefree. The world felt normal to them, but for her, the floor beneath seemed cracked and unstable. The walls seemed closer, like they were trapping her. Every step echoed with the weight of shame. When she reached her locker, she pressed her forehead against the cool metal. Her hand shook as she turned the dial. She wanted to disappear, vanish into nothing, but deep inside her, a small ember of anger flickered. The day dragged on with the memory, replaying again and again. Each classroom, each whisper. She felt like a shadow among them, invisible, yet always noticed. For the wrong reason. At lunch she sat alone, pushing food around her tray, while two girls at another table whispered and glanced at her. She knew they were speaking of her humiliation. By the last bell she wanted nothing more than to escape. She hurried outside, where the autumn wind bit at her cheeks. She hugged her books close and walked quickly down the street. The further from school, the lighter her steps grew, but the memory clung to her like a stain. She reached home, a modest brick house with a small yard. The door opened before she could touch the handle. Her father stood there, tall, broad-shouldered, with kind eyes that always softened when he looked at her. He smiled at first, then paused when he saw her face. "Maya, what happened?" His voice was gentle but carried authority. She tried to shake her head, but the tightness in her throat broke her silence. She dropped her books to the floor, and finally tears streamed down her cheeks. She whispered, "He humiliated me, Dad, in front of everyone." Her father's smile vanished. His jaw tightened and his hand clenched at his side. He pulled her into his chest, wrapping her in his arms. "Tell me everything," he said, firmly. Inside the warmth of their living room, Maya told the story, piece by piece. Her father listened in silence, his eyes darkening with each word she spoke, of the mocking tone, the cruel laughter, the teacher's final whisper. Her father did not interrupt, but when she finished, his silence was louder than thunder. He stood slowly and placed a hand on her shoulder. His voice was low but steady. "Thank you for telling me, Maya. You did nothing wrong, nothing at all." His eyes burned with a fire she rarely saw. "We will handle this." Maya wiped her face, confused. Handle it? How? She asked her. Father looked at her with a faint smile, meant to comfort. "Do not worry about that." He picked up her books, set them neatly on the table, and kissed her forehead. "Rest now," he said firmly. "Tomorrow will be different." Maya nodded, though uncertainty gnawed at her. She trusted him more than anyone, but she could not imagine how tomorrow could erase what had happened. She climbed the stairs to her room and lay on her bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying the day over and over. Her chest still ached, but her father's promise echoed in her head. Tomorrow will be different. Downstairs, her father stood alone in the quiet. His hand rested on the phone. His face was calm, but his eyes burned. He dialed a number and waited when the voice on the other end answered. His words were sharp. "This is Principal Harris," he said. "I need to speak with the school board immediately." Night grew still, yet the storm had already begun. The sun rose over the town, casting a pale glow through the school windows. The next morning began like any other for most students, but for Maya the walk to school felt different. The memory of yesterday's humiliation clung to her like a shadow. Her heart pounded with every step toward the building. Her father's words echoed in her ears. Tomorrow will be different, but she could not imagine how. She entered the hallway. The noise of chatter and laughter filled the air, but whispers still followed her. Students remembered the scene in the classroom, the cruel laughter, the teacher's voice, the shame that still burned in her skin. Some avoided her eyes, some sneered, and some simply looked away, pretending nothing had happened. When Maya entered the classroom, Mr. Collins was already there. His sharp gaze caught her the moment she walked in. A smirk tugged at his lips as if he had been waiting. He tapped his chalk on the desk and said, without hiding his sarcasm, "Ah, Maya, our mathematician, join us. Try not to confuse numbers again today." The class chuckled again, though softer this time. Maya lowered her gaze and walked to her seat, fighting the heat in her chest. But before she sat down, something unexpected happened. The door opened. A tall figure stepped in. His suit was pressed, his tie straight, his face calm yet commanding. The room went silent. It was Principal Harris. Every student straightened in their chair. Their laughter died. Mr. Collins froze mid-step. The principal rarely entered classrooms unannounced. His presence was like a thundercloud, heavy with unspoken power. He scanned the room with quiet authority, then spoke. "Good morning, everyone." His voice was firm but smooth. "May I borrow a few minutes of your time?" Mr. Collins cleared his throat and forced a smile. "Of course, sir. What brings you to my classroom?" The principal's eyes flickered to Maya for a brief second before returning to the teacher. "I heard something troubling yesterday. Something that cannot be ignored." His words sliced the silence. The students exchanged glances, leaning forward. In curiosity, Mr. Collins laughed nervously. "I am not sure what you mean, Sir Principal." Harris stepped closer, his posture unshaken. "I am talking about the treatment of one of our students." He paused, letting the weight of his words sink in. "A student who happens to be my daughter." The revelation hit the room like lightning. Gasps filled the air. Heads turned sharply toward Maya. Her eyes widened, her breath caught. She had not expected her father to reveal it so soon. Mr. Collins' face drained of color. His smug expression faltered, replaced by disbelief. "Your daughter," he repeated, voice breaking slightly. His eyes darted from Maya to the principal, and back again. "Yes, my daughter," the principal said firmly, "and I was told she was mocked, belittled, and humiliated in front of her peers." His tone was controlled, but beneath it burned fury. "Would you like to explain yourself, Mr. Collins?" The teacher stammered, his confidence slipping. I was only teaching, sir, trying to encourage discipline. Some students need tough guidance. That is all." The principal's eyes narrowed. "Discipline should never be cruelty. Guidance should never be humiliation." His voice rose slightly, enough to shake the silence of the room. "You chose to belittle a child instead of teach her. You chose to make her the object of ridicule, and that is unacceptable." The class was frozen. No one dared move. Some students looked ashamed, remembering their laughter. Others watched with wide eyes as the scene unfolded before them. Mr. Collins tried to regain footing. "Sir, perhaps we can discuss this privately." "No," the principal said sharply. "The students who witnessed your actions will hear this too, because they must learn that bullying from anyone, even a teacher, is wrong." He turned to the class. His voice softened, but his eyes remained strong. You all sat here yesterday. Some of you laughed. Some stayed silent, but silence in the face of cruelty is not strength, it is weakness. Remember, this, what you permit, is what you promote. Maya's chest tightened as she listened. Her father's words cut through the shame that had weighed her down. They were sharp but filled with truth. Mr. Collins shifted uncomfortably. Sir, I assure you, it was misunderstood. Principal Harris thundered. My daughter is not here to be mocked. My students are not here to be humiliated by the very person entrusted to guide them. He stepped closer, his towering frame casting a shadow over the teacher. I will not tolerate this, Mr. Collins. You will meet me in my office after class. The room was silent, but the air was electric. The teacher's authority crumbled in front of everyone. He nodded stiffly, his lips pressed tight. The principal turned back to the class and gave Maya one last reassuring glance before leaving. He said firmly, remember, students' respect is the foundation of learning. Without it, nothing stands. He walked out, leaving a heavy silence behind for the rest of the class. Mr. Collins' voice trembled though he tried to continue his lesson. His confidence had been stripped away. Every student noticed Maya sat quietly, her mind spinning. She had not wanted her father to intervene so publicly, yet a part of her felt a surge of pride. He had stood for her with unshaken strength. When the bell rang, whispers exploded. Students crowded in small groups. Some murmured with awe. Did you hear that was the principal's daughter? Others whispered in guilt, remembering their laughter. Some even looked at Maya differently. Now she walked the hall, her head high for the first time in days. She felt eyes following her, but this time it was not just pity or mockery, it was curiosity, it was respect still. She knew this was only the beginning. Her father had promised tomorrow would be different, but she sensed more storms were coming. At lunch she sat alone as usual, but not for long. A boy from her class named Jordan approached, his tray in hand. He hesitated before sitting across from her. Hey, he said quietly, I just wanted to say sorry for laughing yesterday. It was not cool. Maya looked at him, surprised. His sincerity was clear. She nodded softly. Thank you. As the day ended, Maya left the building with a strange mix of emotions, relief, pride, but also unease. Her father had revealed his role to everyone, and that changed everything. She could already imagine the whispers tomorrow. The girl who is the principal's daughter at home that evening. Her father sat across from her at the table, papers spread before him. He looked calm, but his eyes were sharp. Maya, he said, I did not mean to embarrass you, but sometimes silence allows cruelty to grow. She nodded slowly. I understand, Dad, but now everyone knows, and it feels different. Her father leaned closer. People will treat you differently. Yes, some will try to use it against you. Some will respect you, but you must stay true to yourself. Remember who you are. You are strong not because of me, but because of you. His words comforted her, but as she went to bed that night, unease still lingered. She could not shake the feeling that Mr. Collins would not let this end so easily. His pride had been shattered in front of everyone, and wounded pride was dangerous. The next morning proved her right. As Maya walked through the halls, she noticed Mr. Collins standing by the teacher's lounge speaking to another teacher. His eyes followed her, cold and sharp, his mouth curled into a tight smile that was not friendly. She felt a chill run down her spine. Later that day in class, Mr. Collins tried to act normal, but his tone carried a hidden bite. When he asked Maya a question, his words were lined with venom. So Maya, since you are clearly special, let us see if you can answer this one correctly. He smiled thinly. As the class tensed, Maya's hands trembled slightly, but she forced herself to answer. The number is 72. Her voice was steady. Mr. Collins paused, waiting for a mistake, but her answer was correct. He clicked his tongue against his teeth and turned away without praise. He wrote the answer on the board. Moving on quickly, the class whispered. Maya felt a flicker of triumph, but also fear. His hostility was far from over. She could sense it brewing beneath his skin. By the final bell of the day, she was certain she was not just facing a cruel teacher anymore. She was facing a man desperate to regain control, a man who had been humiliated and would not forgive easily. When she stepped outside, she saw her father waiting by the car. His eyes softened when he saw her, but she knew behind them burned determination. He asked quietly, did anything happen today? Maya looked at him and nodded slightly, just enough. She whispered. Principal Harris clenched the steering wheel. As they drove away, his jaw tight, his mind already turning. He knew Mr. Collins would not surrender quietly. He also knew this battle was no longer just about his daughter. It was about the very soul of the school, and, as the car disappeared down the street, the teacher stood at his classroom window watching his reflection, dark and restless, plotting his next move. The storm was far from over now. Everyone knew the principal's daughter was in their midst. Some students grew kinder, some more distant. A few avoided her altogether, but the one change Maya noticed most was in Mr. Collins's. Every glance carried venom, though his words were wrapped in a mask of politeness. He no longer mocked her openly the way he had before, but his tone cut sharp. Whenever he spoke to her, each question was designed to trip her, each assignment graded with a harsher eye, each comment subtle enough to pass as normal, but bitter enough to wound. Maya endured silently, but she could feel his hatred growing like a storm gathering behind the clouds. She told her father small pieces of what she faced, but she left out many details. She feared if he intervened again, things would only grow worse. One afternoon, in class, Mr. Collins gave a surprise quiz. He walked the aisles handing papers to each student. When he reached Maya, he paused, letting the page drop onto her desk with deliberate slowness. His eyes locked on hers as he whispered, "Try not to embarrass yourself again." His lips curved into a thin smile. Before he moved on, Maya's stomach knotted, but she clenched her pencil and worked furiously. When the bell rang, she handed in her paper and left without a word. Later that day, when the grades were returned, Maya saw a large red mark at the top of her page, a failing score. Her chest tightened. She knew she had answered correctly. She had studied all night. Her hands shook as she flipped through the paper. Each answer marked wrong, even the ones she knew were right. Students around her glanced at her grade, whispering again. Mr. Collins' voice boomed to the class. "Let this be a reminder that not everyone succeeds just because of who their parents are. Hard work still matters." His eyes drilled into Maya as he spoke, his cruelty hidden beneath layers of suggestion, but sharp enough for her to feel every cut. Her cheeks burned. She wanted to shout. She wanted to rip the paper in half and throw it at him, but her voice remained locked inside. She stuffed the quiz into her bag and walked out. As soon as the bell released her that evening at home, she sat at her desk staring at the paper. The red marks screamed at her, accusing her of failure. Her father knocked softly and entered. She tried to hide the paper, but his eyes caught it immediately. He picked it up and studied it in silence, his brows furrowed. "Maya, did you really get these wrong?" he asked. Gently, she shook her head quickly. "No, Dad. I studied. I checked my answers twice. I know I was right." The principal's jaw tightened. He looked again, his eyes narrowing. He knew enough math to see the truth. The answers were correct, but each had been deliberately marked wrong. His chest rose with restrained fury. He placed the paper down and looked at Maya, his voice calm but deadly serious. "This is no longer about pride or discipline. This is sabotage. He is trying to destroy you, Maya." His eyes softened when they met hers. "I will not allow this, but..." Maya grabbed his hand, shaking. "Dad, please no. If you fight him again, everyone will say I'm only protected because of you. I need to prove I can stand on my own." Her father hesitated. His instinct was to protect, but he saw the fire in her eyes. He nodded slowly. "Very well, Maya, but I will be watching. If he crosses the line again, I will not stay silent." The next day, Maya returned to school with her head higher. She refused to let his cruelty define her. She answered every question. She studied harder than before, and when he smirked, she met his gaze without flinching. But Mr. Collins was not finished. He had been humiliated once before, and he would not allow it again. That night, he sat at his desk alone in the empty classroom. His hand gripped his pen tightly as he scribbled notes across paper. His muttering filled the quiet room. "If she wants to play this game, we will see who wins." His pride had twisted into obsession. The following week, a rumor began to spread through the school. Some students whispered that Maya was only getting good grades because her father was the principal. Others claimed she had privileges. Others did not deserve. The whispers grew louder by the day. Some friends she thought she had kept their distance. Now others confronted her directly. At lunch, one girl leaned across the table, her tone sharp. "You think you are better than us just because your dad runs this place." Maya froze, her tray untouched. "I never said that," she replied softly. The girl sneered. "You do not have to say it. Everyone knows." The words cut deep. Maya left the cafeteria, her stomach empty, but her heart heavier than ever. She found a quiet corner in the library and sat alone, fighting tears. She knew the source of these whispers. She could see Mr. Collins' fingerprints all over them. His revenge was not just about her humiliation now. It was about turning the whole school against her. That evening she told her father only part of it, but kept the cruelest whispers to herself. He already carried so much anger. She feared If he knew everything, he might act rashly, and if he did, the students would never stop saying she was only strong because of him. But Principal Harris was not blind. He saw the shift in how students treated her. He heard the whispers as he walked, the holes. He noticed the teachers glancing at him uneasily. He knew something poisonous was spreading beneath the surface there. Breaking point came 2 days later during class. Mr. Collins called Maya to the front of the room. He handed her a problem. Written on the board, "Solve this," he commanded. His smile returned cruel and sharp. Maya looked at the board. Her heart raced. She solved the problem quickly and correctly, placing the chalk down with trembling hands. The answer was clear, undeniable, but before she could step away, Mr. Collins smirked and crossed out her work, declaring, "Wrong again, Miss Harris. Perhaps numbers are too much for youth class." Erupted with laughter. Maya stood frozen, her breath shallow. She knew she was right. Everyone could see it, but his voice held authority, and the laughter drowned her truth. Then a voice rose from the back. It was Jordan, the boy who had once apologized. "That is the right answer, sir. I checked it." To the class turned gasps, filling the air. Mr. Collins, face flushed with rage, he slammed the chalk onto the desk. "Enough," he snapped. "I will not tolerate disrespect in my classroom." "Sit down, Jordan." But the damage was done. The class murmured louder. Now doubt stirred in their eyes. They had seen the truth. This time they had heard it from another voice. The cracks in his control were spreading. Maya left school that day, shaken but also strangely stronger. Someone had spoken for her. Someone had seen the truth. She was not alone anymore. But Mr. Collins fumed in silence, his pride torn again, his career, his control slipping. He stared at his reflection in the empty classroom mirror, his voice low and dangerous. "This is not over." He picked up the red pen and pressed it hard against the desk. "Until she breaks, until he breaks, I will not stop." That night, while Maya tried to study, her window rattled from the wind. She felt a chill deep inside, a whisper of warning. The storm was not just coming, it was already here with her. Whispers in the hallways had not stopped. In fact, they grew louder each day. Maya could hear her name slip from lips when she passed. She could see the way some students looked at her with suspicion and others with pity. Rumors twisted and spread faster than wildfire, fueled by Mr. Collins' subtle but poisonous influence. He had not forgiven the humiliation of being challenged in front of his class. His pride was wounded beyond repair, and he wanted revenge. The more Maya tried to ignore him, the more determined he became to break her. The classroom had turned into a battlefield. She was no longer just a student to him, she was a threat. One morning, Maya walked into class and found her desk covered in slips of paper. Words written in bold, cruel handwriting. "Loser, cheat, daddies, girls." Some were even uglier. She froze, her chest tightening as laughter rippled through the room. Her hands trembled as she gathered the papers, stuffing them into her bag. She refused to give them the satisfaction of seeing her cry. Mr. Collins walked in moments later, pretending not to notice, but the faint smirk on his lips betrayed him. The class fell silent under his gaze, but Maya could feel the trap tightening around her. Every word, every glance was designed to push her further into despair. Afternoon, Maya found herself sitting alone in the library, staring at the cruel notes. She wanted to throw them away, but something inside her refused. She kept them hidden as proof she was tired of being the quiet victim. Something had to change. Meanwhile, Principal Harris noticed the shift in his daughter. She smiled less, her shoulders sagged when she walked in the door at night. She insisted she was fine, but he knew better. One evening, he confronted her gently, placing a hand on her shoulder. "Maya, tell me the truth. What is happening?" She hesitated, but finally opened her bag and placed the slips of paper on the table. His eyes darkened as he read them. His jaw tightened, his chest rose with a heavy breath. "This has gone too far, Maya. I will not stand by any longer." She pleaded with him. "Dad, please. If you step in again, it will only get worse. They will say I am weak, that I cannot fight my own battles." He knelt down, meeting her eyes firmly. "You are not weak. You should never have to fight alone against cruelty, but if this is the path you want, I will respect it." He paused, but his tone grew colder. "Understand me though, Maya. If he crosses the line again, I will not hold back." The next day, tension rose higher. Jordan, the boy who once defended her, noticed the bruises on her spirit. He walked beside her between classes, whispering, "You should not face this alone. You know he is setting you up." She sighed. "I know, but if I tell my father, it will only explode." Jordan frowned. Sometimes explosions are what it takes to clear the air during class. That same day, Mr. Collins announced a group project. He assigned partners, deliberately pairing Maya with the most outspoken girl in the room, the same one who accused Maya of acting superior. The girl rolled her eyes and groaned loudly. "Oh great, Daddy's girl is my partner now. This will be fun." The class laughed again. Mr. Collins said nothing. His silence was approved laughter. "Class," Maya approached him, her voice steady. "Why did you pair me with her?" His eyes glinted. "Because I want to see if you can actually work with others, or if you only survive under protection." His words carried venom hidden beneath professional tone. Maya clenched her fists but said nothing. She walked away, but every step echoed with rage. The project meetings with her partner were disasters. The girl mocked her at every turn, blamed her for mistakes, refused to cooperate. Maya worked late into the night, completing most of the project alone. When presentation day arrived, her partner stood smug and unprepared. Mr. Collins watched closely as Maya carried the entire presentation on her shoulders. When it ended, he clapped slowly, his smile sharp. "Thank you, Miss Harris, for showing us once again how difficult teamwork can be when one student insists on doing everything." The class snickered. Maya felt the knife twist again. She wanted to scream that it was a setup, that he had designed this, but her voice stayed locked inside. That night, she broke down in tears in a room. She felt trapped, her strength fading. The ember of defiance inside her flickered but did not die. She whispered to herself, "I will not let him win across town." Mr. Collins sat in his apartment drinking heavily. His pride gnawed at him. His career felt threatened by the principal's watchful eyes, his reputation stained by whispers of unfairness. He muttered to himself, pacing the room, "If she ruins me, I will take her down first." His obsession had reached dangerous heights. The following week, the storm broke during a test. Mr. Collins accused Maya of cheating. He claimed he had seen her glance at another student's paper. Though no one else had noticed, he seized her test, ripping it from her desk, declaring loudly, "Cheating will not be tolerated, not even from the daughter of the principal." The room gasped. Maya's face went pale. Her hands shook as she whispered, "I did not cheat, sir." But his voice thundered over hers. "Enough, you will face consequences." The class sat frozen as he stormed to his desk, writing a disciplinary report. When the bell rang, whispers exploded around her. Maya felt her world crumbling. She walked out, numb, her body heavy. Her chest ached with humiliation, deeper than before. That evening, her father was waiting at home. The moment he saw her face, he knew. She handed him the report with trembling hands. His eyes scanned it, and fury erupted in his chest. His voice roared through the house, "That is enough, Maya, enough." He paced the room like a lion, caged. His fists clenched, his eyes blazed. "He has crossed the line. You will not suffer another day under his cruelty. Tomorrow I end this." Maya shook her head, tears streaming. "Please, Dad, do not. You will destroy everything if you fight him." He stopped, turned, and placed his hands firmly on her shoulders. "Maya, listen to me. This is no longer about protecting you. This is about protecting every student in that school. If he can do this to you, imagine what he does to others in the shadows." Her heart pounded. She wanted to believe him, but fear clawed at her. What if the school turned against her? What if students whispered louder? What if her world collapsed completely? But deep inside she knew he was right. That night, Principal Harris prepared every document, every piece of evidence. He gathered the cruel notes, the sabotaged test, the false accusations. He even spoke to Jordan, who bravely agreed to tell the board what he had witnessed. The plan was set. The confrontation would come in the light, not in the shadows. Lay in bed, unable to sleep, her body trembled with fear and hope. Twisted together, she knew tomorrow would change everything. Her father was right. This was no longer just about her. It was about truth and justice. The next morning, as students filled the hall with chatter, a heavy announcement echoed through the intercom. "All faculty, please report to the boardroom immediately." Teachers exchanged uneasy glances. Students whispered curiously. No one knew what awaited, but Maya did. She sat quietly, her heart pounding. She could almost feel the storm gathering above inside. The boardroom. Principal Harris stood tall, facing the members of the school board. His voice was steady, his evidence laid out in front of him. Beside him, Maya sat pale but strong, clutching the cruel notes. Jordan sat nearby, ready to speak. His presence was a small flame of courage in the heavy room. Mr. Collins entered moments later, his face twisted between arrogance and unease. He glanced at Maya, then at her father. His jaw tightened as he realized this was the showdown he had feared. Principal Harris rose to his full height. His voice carried across the chamber, clear and commanding. "Today we face a question of integrity, of dignity, and of justice. A teacher entrusted with shaping young minds has instead chosen cruelty, humiliation, and lies. And he has done so not only to my daughter but to others as well." His eyes locked on Mr. Collins. "And today it ends." The room held its breath. The battle lines were drawn. The truth was about to be revealed. The boardroom was silent, except for the steady ticking of the clock. The long wooden table stretched across the room, lined with school board members. Their faces were serious, their hands folded in front of them. At the head stood Principal Harris, tall and composed, but his eyes burned with restrained fury. Beside him, Maya sat, her hands clasped tight on her lap. Jordan sat nearby, his jaw set with determination. He had chosen to be here to speak the truth. Mr. Collins entered with heavy footsteps. His suit was pressed, but his face betrayed unease. He adjusted his tie nervously, but forced a smug smile as he sat across from the principal. His eyes darted to Maya, then back to the board. He knew this was his reckoning, but pride still clung to him like armor. One of the board members cleared her throat. "Mr. Collins, serious accusations have been brought forward. We will hear both sides. Today, Principal Harris, you may begin." The principal rose slowly, placing a folder on the table. He opened it with calm precision, but his voice carried power. "Each of these notes," he said, "were found on my daughter's desk. Anonymous, cruel, degrading." He held them up one by one for the board to see. Words like "loser, cheat, daddy's girl," written in bold letters. His jaw tightened. "Students may be cruel at times, but I have reason to believe this campaign of humiliation was not only allowed but encouraged." He laid the notes down, then pulled out a graded test marked with red ink. Every answer correct, yet marked wrong. He held it up. "This is sabotage, deliberate." He set it down sharply and looked straight at the teacher. "This was no mistake." Gasps rippled among the board members. Some shifted uncomfortably. The evidence was heavy, but they needed more. Jordan stood, his voice trembling but clear. "I saw it with my own eyes. Sir, Maya gave the right answer in class. He told her she was wrong even when everyone could see she was right. He tried to make her look foolish." His hands clenched at his sides. "It was cruel and unfair." Mr. Collins laughed harshly, breaking the silence. "Are we really going to take the word of children over an educator of 20 years? He leaned forward, sneering at Maya. "Perhaps your daughter simply cannot handle discipline. Perhaps she misinterpreted tough love as cruelty." The principal's fist slammed the table, making several members jump. "Discipline is guidance, not humiliation. Discipline is not sabotaging a child's work." His voice thundered through the chamber. "No teacher has the right to break a child's spirit." His eyes locked on Mr. Collins. "You failed in your duty, and you will answer for it." The teacher's smugness cracked, sweat forming on his brow. He opened his mouth to speak, but one of the board members raised her hand. "Mr. Collins, do you deny altering this student's grade?" Deliberately he hesitated, then forced a smile. "I deny it completely. It must have been a mistake, nothing more." But his voice wavered. The board noticed. "The students present noticed and no." The board member leaned forward. "Mr. Collins, these notes found on her desk. Do you deny involvement?" He scoffed. "Of course I do. Do you think I have time to write childish insults?" He laughed dryly, but the laugh rang hollow. Maya sat still, but inside her chest burned. She wanted to speak, but fear held her tongue. Her father's hand brushed against hers, silently telling her to be strong. Board members whispered among themselves. The weight of the evidence was heavy, but procedure required fairness. They announced, "We will deliberate. You may all wait outside." The hallway outside the boardroom was tense. Maya sat quietly, her heart racing. Her father stood like a sentinel, unmoving. Jordan paced back and forth, muttering about injustice. Mr. Collins sat at the far end, smirking despite the sweat on his face. He leaned toward Maya, his voice low, so only she could hear. "This is not over, little girl. Even if I fall, I will drag you down with me." Maya froze, her breath caught. Her father noticed and stepped closer, glaring at the teacher. But before he could speak, the boardroom door opened. Filed back in. The board members' faces were stern, one speaking on behalf of them all. "Mr. Collins, the evidence presented is troubling, deeply troubling. At best it shows negligence, at worst, deliberate abuse of authority. While we have not reached a final verdict, we will be suspending you from duty, effective immediately, pending further investigation." The words hung in the air like thunder. Maya's chest lifted with a sudden rush of relief. She could almost breathe again. Her father nodded once, his expression controlled but victorious. Jordan grinned wide, finally hope sparking in his eyes, but Mr. Collins' face twisted in rage, his mask shattered. He shot to his feet, shouting, "This is ridiculous. You think you can destroy me because of her?" "Because of him." He pointed a trembling finger at the principal. His voice cracked but grew louder. "I have given my life to this school, and I will not be ruined by lie security." stepped forward, but he shoved his chair back, storming out of the room. His voice echoed down the hall. "This is not the end. You will regret this." All of youth room fell silent. Again Maya's body trembled with both fear and relief. Her father placed a steady hand on her shoulder, whispering softly, "It is over for him now." But in his heart he knew it was not truly over. A man like Collins, wounded in pride, desperate and cornered, was dangerous that night. Maya sat by her window staring at the moon. Her father's words replayed in her head. His suspension was a victory, but her heart felt uneasy. She remembered his whisper in the hall, his promise that it was not over. She feared he meant it. The following days at school were strange. Students whispered, but now with curiosity and guilt. Some avoided her, some offered awkward kindness. Jordan stuck close by her, sighed, reminding her she was not alone without Mr. Collins in the classroom. The air felt lighter. Teachers carried on lessons without venom. But beneath it all, a shadow remained. One evening, as Principal Harris locked up his office late at night, he noticed papers scattered across his desk, papers he had left neatly stacked. Hours earlier the door had been locked. He frowned, carefully checking, but nothing was missing. Yet the unease grew. Someone had been here. Someone had touched his work. The next day whispers returned. A rumor spread like wildfire. Maya was only safe because her father had cheated the system. Some said he forced the board to suspend Collins. Others claimed Maya had lied. The poison was back, but this time more dangerous, because it carried the voice of an unseen hand. Principal Harris tightened security around the school, but in his heart he knew Collins was behind it. He had been suspended but not silenced. Maya tried to stay strong, but her nights grew restless. She dreamed of shadows whispering her name. She dreamed of walking into class and finding every student turned against her. She dreamed of her father standing alone while the world pointed at him, accusing. One afternoon, she opened her locker and found a single slip of paper. It was not cruel like the others. This one carried only 4 words written in bold strokes: "You will pay soon." Her breath caught, her body froze. She scanned the hall but saw nothing. No one watching, no one laughing, just the slip of paper burning in her hand. She showed it to her father that evening. His face hardened, his jaw clenched. He whispered, "This has gone beyond cruelty. This is a threat." He looked at her with steady eyes. "Tomorrow we bring this to the police." Nodded, but fear lingered. Her world was twisting faster than she could hold. She wanted it to end. She wanted to feel safe again. But the storm still raged. The next morning, police arrived at the school. They spoke quietly with Principal Harris, reviewing the threats. They searched lockers, questioned staff, increased patrols. But Collins was nowhere to be found. He had vanished since his suspension, yet his shadow remained that night. As Maya lay in bed, she heard a sound, a creak from the floor below her. Heart raced. She held her breath, listening. Another sound, a faint knock against glass. She sat up, trembling. Then silence. The house was quiet again. Her father rushed to her room, holding a baseball bat in his hand. "Did you hear that?" he asked, breathless. She nodded, eyes wide. He searched every corner of the house, but found nothing. No broken locks, no shattered windows. But the unease lingered. He sat beside her bed, gently taking her hand. "Do not be afraid, Maya. Whatever comes, we will face it together." His words soothed her, but the fire in his eyes betrayed his true thought. He would not let Collins near her again, even if it meant war. And somewhere, in the darkness outside, unseen eyes watched from the shadows. Unseen lips whispered, "This is not finished." The house was silent, but the silence was heavy. Maya sat awake, staring at the faint glow of the street lamp outside. Her father had checked every door, every window twice, yet she still felt the eyes from the shadows. The threatening note still burned in her mind. "You will pay soon." The next morning, she walked into school with her father at her side. His presence comforted her, but his face was carved with tension. The police had increased patrols, but Collins had vanished since his suspension. He was not at his apartment, not at the school, not anywhere anyone expected. But his shadow lingered everywhere. Students whispered, teachers avoided speaking of him. It was as if the whole school was waiting for something to break. Classes carried on quietly, but Maya felt unease with every step, every creak of the floor, every whisper behind her back. Her father had told her to stay strong, but fear gnawed at her ribs. That afternoon, an emergency announcement rang through the intercom. "All students remain in classrooms." Teachers locked the doors. A shiver spread across the halls. Maya's classmates looked around nervously. Some asked what was happening. The teacher quickly shut the door and pulled the blinds, but his voice trembled. "Stay calm, everyone." Maya's heart pounded. She knew she did not need anyone to tell her Collins was back. Minutes later, a crash echoed through the hallway. The sound of glass breaking followed by the slam of a door. Students gasped, huddling closer. Maya gripped the edge of her desk, her breath shallow. She could almost hear his voice, even before it came. Footsteps. Heavy, deliberate, a voice booming down the hall. You think you can take everything from me. You think you can destroy me. I gave my life to this school, and you will not ruin me. Harris. The name rang out like thunder. Principal Harris, Maya's father. He was the target. Maya's chest clenched. The classroom shook with silence. Students stared at her, wide-eyed. Fear spread, but she forced herself to breathe. She whispered to herself, I will not break. Outside in the hall, Principal Harris stood tall, his body tense, his fists clenched. Collins appeared at the far end, his clothes disheveled, his eyes burning with madness. He held no weapon, but his presence was dangerous enough. His voice cracked as he shouted, You humiliated me. You took my career. You turned my students against me, and now I will make you pay. The police officers patrolling the building rushed forward, but Harris raised a hand firmly. I will speak with him first. His voice was calm, though his heart thundered. He stepped forward, his eyes locked on the man who had tormented his daughter. Collins sneered. You think you are better than me because of your title, because of your daughter. He spat on the floor. She is weak, just like every other student. I broke her, and I can break you too, Principal. Harris's voice rang strong across the hall. You broke nothing. You exposed yourself. You revealed to everyone the truth of who you are, a coward who hides behind cruelty. Collins roared with rage, charging forward, but the police intercepted, restraining him as he struggled violently. His shouts echoed through the hall. I will not be forgotten. I will not be erased. The officers dragged him away, his voice fading into a desperate scream. The school was silent once more, but the silence was filled with relief. Students peeked out of classrooms, teachers exhaled tension, parents arrived rushing to collect their children. The storm had passed that evening. Maya sat with her father in the living room, the weight of fear slowly melting. She whispered, Dad, is it really over now? He nodded slowly, his eyes still heavy but calmer. Yes, Maya, it is over. He will never come near this school again. She leaned into him, tears filling her eyes. I was so scared, Dad. He wrapped his arms around her, whispering softly, Courage is not the absence of fear, Maya. It is standing, even when fear grips you, and you stood. You endured. The days that followed changed everything. The board expelled Collins permanently, his teaching license revoked, his reputation shattered. Students whispered still, but their whispers were different now. They spoke of his downfall, of Maya's strength, of the principal's courage. Some who once laughed at her now approached with quiet apologies. Jordan remained by her side, reminding her she was not alone. Teachers began to teach without fear. Students began to learn without dread. The weight that had hung over the school lifted slowly but surely. Maya walked the halls differently now, her head higher, her steps steadier. She was no longer just the girl who had been bullied. She was the girl who had endured the storm. She had faced cruelty, humiliation and fear, yet she stood unbroken. On the last day of the term, the principal called an assembly. Students filled the auditorium, teachers lined the walls. Principal Harris stood on the stage, Maya seated in the front row. His voice carried strong across the crowd. Today we speak not of one teacher, not of one student, but of all of us. Because silence in the face of cruelty is not strength, it is weakness, and here we choose strength. He looked at Maya, his eyes soft with pride. Maya showed us that courage is not loud. Courage is quiet. Resilience. Courage is refusing to break even when the world tries to shatter you. He paused, his voice lowering but carrying deep. We must remember always that dignity, respect, and justice are the foundation of education. Without them, nothing stands. The students erupted in applause. Many stood clapping. Some even cheered. Maya sat stunned, tears brimming in her eyes. For the first time she felt not shame but pride. Her father had spoken her truth, and the whole school had heard. That evening, as she sat by her window watching the sunset, she whispered to herself, I will not be broken. I will rise. Her father joined her, placing a hand on her shoulder, his voice soft. Sometimes, Maya, life will test you with cruelty, with betrayal, with fear, but never forget you are stronger than those who try to destroy you. And sometimes losing everything is the only way to find who you really are. Maya smiled through her tears. She felt the truth in his words. She had been broken down, humiliated and threatened, yet she found strength not only in herself, but in those who stood beside her. She had discovered courage where she thought there was none. She had learned that survival was not about silence, but about standing, and she had seen that revenge was not hers to take, but justice had found its way. The chapter closed with Collins gone, his shadow erased. The scars remained, but they were scars of strength, not weakness. Maya knew the road ahead would still carry whispers, still carry eyes watching her, but she would face it. She would walk forward head high, because she was not just the daughter of the principal, she was Maya, and she was unbroken. The end.